one of the biggest upgrades of the bike. Let's talk about the motor.
Yeah, we talk about motor sizes here as nominal and then also peak.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge thing that we just have to like get out on the table right now is that, you know, we have a 500 watt nominal and a 750 watt nominal option.
Yeah.
You know, both of them peak at respectively much higher numbers.
Yes.
So the 500 watt, 1092 or 1092 watts,
Yeah.
and then we've got the 750 as all our 750 watts peak at 1310,
Yeah.
1310
Yeah.
watts. So the feeling is very different when you ride those two bikes.
Yeah.
And when you ride against our competitors as well, you see a very clear difference.
Right.
And that's something that we're really proud about. And we wanted to make sure that 750 watt experience that we give our other customers and other models trickle down to what we do here with XP4.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what's cool is you can tell in the components that go into the bike, you know, the math makes sense, where it's a 20 amp controller and a 48 volt system for our 500 watt platform, but then a 24 amp controller with the 48 volt system for the 750. And that hill climbing ability on that 750 is insane. It's a rocket also off the line for the 0 to 20 throttle tests and everything. So it's a really, really incredible bike and performance. And I would say that there is nothing in its price point that can actually compete with it aside from the Express 750, right? They're both $1299, but those are the only bikes in testing that actually perform at an extremely high level that are advertised as 750 watts and performing, you know, at the expectation of a 750 watts. So yes, uses the Stealth M24, a change in the internal design to the motor to make it much quieter, but also one of the changes that helped reduce the noise was the tire. And that was a huge discussion when we were first designing this bike. So Rob, let's talk about the tires.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it yesterday. You know, one of our competitors sells a tire with a hybrid tread where you have this slick patch down the center and then maybe, you know, knobbier tread around the sides. So, you know, you can tackle streets or you can tackle, you know, some light off-roading gravel. That knobby tread's going to give you an advantage there. And one of our competitors, you know, a lot of our customers were going over and buying their hybrid tires and putting them on the XP3, which is just the funniest thing. You'd go through and read the reviews on their tires, and most people were saying, hey, fits the XP3, works great.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we saw all of that feedback and we're like, hey, people are loving, you know, the hybrid tread pattern. Why don't we come up with our own? And yeah, you get a couple advantages from that. You get the multi-surface riding. You also get, you know, this noise reduction because now you're on this, you know, smooth tread pattern while you're riding. And then also you get a little bit of an efficiency bump, actually.
Yeah, that to me is just so cool. So much of the range of a bike is caught up in aspects of like wind resistance and tread pattern and everything like that. And this tread pattern picked up great efficiency, and then you actually tack that on with the torque sensor. You know, we were able to pick up about 10% additional efficiency compared to the 3.0. Even if you go standard range 3.0 compared to standard range XP4, same battery size, but one's a torque sensor with this tread pattern and one's the knobby tire with the cadence sensor. You know, 10% improvement in efficiency is awesome for people, and especially when you build on that and throw in a 17.5 amp hour battery, you can get a really far range. So I think like this bike has done a fantastic job at just like deleting noise from the riding experience.
So we've gone from the metal fenders to the polypropylene fenders here, and some people might think to themselves, well, isn't metal the upgrade over the polypropylene? No, that's where you're wrong. So the metal fenders actually are cheaper than polypropylene. It actually is more expensive to go to polypropylene.
Way cheaper.
And you get, you know, this benefit of, you know, number one, polypropylene, you demonstrated this on stage yesterday. You can bend the thing, you can smack it against the ground, whatever. It comes back to form. It doesn't get dented. It doesn't crack like a lot of plastics do. It's a really amazing material. And then you also get this benefit of, I think we've all been out there riding our XP 3.0. You ride over some gravel. You get these rocks clinking and clanking, you know, over your metal fenders. you get rid of a lot of that with the polypropylene fender, which is kind of a nice secondary benefit. We had a 12-degree stem on the original XP3, and what that means is the head tube of the bike is at a certain angle, and then there's this, essentially offset. So your head tube looks like this, and then your stem comes up like this, right? And that's that 12 degrees. And so that ends up meaning that the rider, when they're sitting on the saddle, is a little bit further away from the handlebars, right? And so customers were taking it from this angle and going like this, right? So it's super close to you, and it almost looked like, a rudder steer on a boat or something. It was just kind of weird to look at and not necessarily safe. We didn't test it in that orientation.
Right.
And so, for this, we're like, okay, if riders want a shorter reach, if they want the bars to be closer to them, we can definitely accommodate that. So we went from this 12-degree offset for the stem to a 0-degree offset. So you'll see that the head tube is at the same angle that the stem riser is at. And so those bars end up being closer to the customer. I think it's a reduction of 13%.
15%.
15% in reach. And so, you end up being in this super comfortable upright riding position. I take, some night rides in my neighborhood on the XP4, and, I'm sitting fully upright. I could be out there for hours, not get tired, not get uncomfortable. It's a great experience.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to, with the Lectric one, we had the articulating stem that would come in towards you. And, it's a very similar cockpit feeling, right? It feels more compact, it feels more comfortable. And that's just driven by customer feedback and also thinking of customer safety, where it's like, all right, guys, stop flipping these handlebars around. We'll just redesign the bike in order to accommodate the request. So I think that was really cool.
I mean, I think you've mentioned it. Using hand signals, right, as cyclists have for decades, I think is a great thing to do. It's very visible to others on the road, but it's pretty nice when it's, nighttime, right, and maybe people can't see that you're signaling or whatever. Now you've got the turn signals integrated with that rear brake light, which, by the way, the rear brake light is now brake activated, and so when you pull your brakes, your rear brake light, rear tail light gets a little bit brighter, lets those people behind you know that you are slowing down, that you're going to be braking. It's a couple nice safety features there. Safety is the number one priority. The other thing we didn't mention, speaking of safety, UL2271 and UL2849, and maybe that goes without saying at this point.
Sure.
I think
it's expected.
It's expected,
I think
right?
every bike we've made since November off the production line since November 2022 has been UL2849. So we've been doing it for a while now, but it is a great safety feature, of course. Yes, seems like people really like having more color options for their bikes, and so we've kind of listened to them and brought some of that here. So, Rob, do you just want to talk about new color palettes for these bikes?
It was a part of the, new look for Lectric and this visual brand language and industrial design exercise. And so, part of that is, what does the frame look like? Tubing decisions, lines of those tubes, everything like that. But another big part of that is colors and graphics. How do the colors and the graphics, get across what we want to say about the Lectric brand? And so, folks will probably notice the graphics, carry over from Expedition 2, X-Peak 2 with those 3 lines that we've done, since the super early days of Lectric with the slightly smaller logo. You have that beautiful XP with the 3 lines on the rear carrier. I really am a fan of that graphic. And then you mentioned it, colors, right? People have been asking for colors, and we've done a lot of experimentation and, just thinking about how can we be different? How can we do something that's unique, something that's timeless, something that's going to appeal to a wide range of people? And so, we've done black, we've done white, but we wanted to do better black and better white, right? So we have Tempest Gray, Stratus White. I personally think my favorite color is Stratus White.
Same here,
But then we wanted to, introduce a little bit of color for those folks who, want to get a little brighter out there. And so bringing the Raindrop Blue, super popular color on the Expedition, as well as the Pine Green. The Pine Green has been a fan favorite so far. I think when we were placing those original orders, it was like, oh man, I don't know if this one's going to catch on in the way
Right.
that we think it is. So we didn't order that many. So it might be on back order for a little bit. We're
Yeah.
going to get more. We're going to even out the mix.
Early reactions is it is absolutely way more popular than what we were expecting, and we got to get better at getting information and data from customers on the color schemes they want, because whatever you and I end up thinking always ends up being wrong in terms of the mix ratios. You look at these bikes, and I was looking at the studio shots, and it's just such a freaking good looking bike. Like, it is the best looking bike. It seems elevated, premium, and the studio shots of it, it's like, this is like a premium car company, right? Where just excellent design and detail, right? Paying attention to those details really do come through at the end product. I know sometimes, I don't do a great job recognizing that in the development process with you guys, but then you see the final outcome and it's like, oh, this is why they made all these little details and decisions.
Yeah, I think that one probably has the most pressure of like, yeah,
Right.
if we get this thing wrong, it's not going to be
Right.
great,
Right.
from all stretches. But honestly, it comes back to the team. I mean, that's the other thing that's, I think, is a good reflection here is like when you guys started the company, right, it was just you two, and now there's
Right.
like a legion of people
Yeah.
that help get these things across the finish line from all different aspects, which is why you guys had Joe and had Blake and all these different design series offshoots to really capture, okay, guys, it's a team effort here.
Yeah.
That really leads to that. So yeah, it was fun to obviously help lead some of that, and it was formative for Lectric to get to this part of the evolution.
Yeah, like not at all envious of the pressure of the tasks that you
Yeah.
and your team had upon you. So I think it was incredibly impressive what you pulled off. And I think, inherently there's a lot of challenge being met between, all right, there's innovation that we want to layer into the bike, and then there is customer feedback, right? They're telling us what they want to see. And then you also have to deal with, myself and finance and the board saying like, I really want to keep the price at $9.99. And I think that's about as difficult of a task as you can possibly do, but I think it's a lot of, long nights, relationships, getting scrappy and creative about how can we solve for certain things in order to get the appropriate leverage, the scale, efficiency, whatever, in order to make this bike so much better. If you look at this bike, almost every single part of it has been improved upon. And now it's so exciting for us as a company to sit and see people's reactions, people's excitement. Let's get after it and let's get to it. It's gonna be a fun journey with XP4.